Good afternoon, everyone. This is 𝗍𝗫𝗃𝗍 coming to you from Melbourne. And today is our 139th episode of Career Care Package, a daily LinkedIn live show that me and Caroline has been hosting since COVID-19 hit. And today we are absolutely delighted to welcome Sharon. She has been on our show a couple of times before, and every time she has been on our show, she has provided absolutely amazing insights, practical insights, so that people can start to implement in their job search. And today we are talking about where the jobs are. I was actually going to say where the hell jobs are, but I think that would have been. Now, just I think I know there's a campaign, right? Where the hell are ya? So I just that's what it is.
What the hell are you?
But look, it is absolutely our pleasure to welcome Sharon and talk to about what has been happening in the employment market, which industries are kind of hiring, what are some of the new changes in the recruitment practices in the COVID and even post-COVID era that she envisions. But before we welcome Sharon, let's welcome Caroline, the co-host of the show.
Thanks, Nation. It's absolutely fantastic to be here, and I'm very excited to be talking to you, Sharon, because when you said that you're busy, my little radar went, aha,
Yeah.
we're going to do a good show. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's great. Great to be on, guys. Absolutely.
Fantastic. I wonder, just for people that haven't met you before, perhaps to give a bit of background about on-the-ball personnel and the types of roles that you recruit for might be a good place to start.
Sure. So, so On the Ball's been around, well, we celebrated 30 years while we're in lockdown. So we didn't actually really celebrate, sadly, but that will come, don't you worry, when we get out of lockdown. 30 years we've been in existence, and how recruitment has changed. But look, the space that we've predominantly been in is all of white collar. But the last number of years we did diversify out into more parameters. So we started to embark on, not just call centers and, admin and PAs and stuff. We moved into digital, we moved into essential services. So we've really broadened the spectrum, and that really came, through a referral, through actually companies going, we heard you placed XYZ, could you help us with this? So we didn't actually go looking for it. It happened actually quite randomly. But what it did was it really set us up well for COVID. Unbeknownst that, the universe was smiling. But yeah, look, definitely seen all the changes that have happened in recruitment. Absolutely love this space. You'd have to after 30 years, or either that or I'm crazy, one or the other. So
we didn't put that in your bio, but we can put it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but look, we are Melbourne based, but we do a lot of work all around Australia.
Yeah. So what are you seeing now? What are you working like? What's keeping you busy?
Yeah. So look, I have to say that probably the two roles or two sectors that have kept us, most busy are essential services, because they were never impacted by COVID. If anything, they were impacted positively by COVID. So essential services are things like, electricians, plumbing, all of that. They're always in demand, and I think that demand increased. It's been very hard to find talent in that space. So we've had to really get savvy as finding the talent, and thankfully we've placed a number of that. And what's been really good is that we've helped Company A, because it's a small community like South Australia or Darwin, for example, done a lot of work in Darwin. They've referred us to other organisations who've been struggling to find talent. So we've forged ourselves this giant network. The other side has been in the digital marketing, content creator side. So companies are going, right, we're going to come out of COVID, but we know how important our brand is, and we need to get the content out. We need to make sure that's the new vehicle for sales, so to speak. I don't think we'll see BDMs much around anymore. People are all moving towards getting good content out, having someone who's a digital marketer who can set all that up for them and have them in-house. So we've done a lot of positions there as well.
So the essential services in terms of the trades, you mentioned that you've been struggling to fill those roles. Where are you looking? What are you trying to do? Like, where are you looking for the staff?
Yeah, so we go on social media, and we've obviously gone to the job boards as well. But we also have the social media, like the group pages in, say, the group, for South Australia. And we've actually asked for referrals. So somebody comes in and they're, maybe, it's not quite the salary they're wanting. Do they know somebody else? We've also, Seek obviously has another section that's set up on there that you can actually go in and have a look at applications. There's a cost for that. So we have utilised that a little bit as well, and we've found some successful placements out of that. We've had some, that have come from the social media side. So it's been a really, really good mixture. And referrals. So you've got to be across everything at the moment. There's not one area that's, having the most impact. It's really making sure that if you're looking for talent, you've got to go across a number of, platforms.
Which is an interesting message for people, isn't it? If you're looking for a job, you might want to be looking at exactly those platforms that you've mentioned as well. So, and in terms of the digital space, is there a cohort of jobs that is particularly in demand, or is it in terms of the marketing, or is it across the board?
Look, I think it's both in the marketing and the content, just because as we move out of, companies are very savvy. Those who have jumped on it now, they're getting content written up, they're posting, they want to get their brand out there for two reasons. Number one, because they obviously want to, sell the business that they're in, they want to promote that. But secondly, it looks like they're an employer of choice. We're still buoyant, we're solid, we're certain, we're here. This is the content we're putting out. So talent, out of COVID, there's one thing that I found that has really shown up is that the candidates weren't wanting to go from one client to another. There was a massive degree of uncertainty going, you know what, look at Melbourne, they've just gone into, lockdown. I'm not leaving. Better the devil I know than the devil I don't. So we were dipping into a pond of only people that were available. Now, they were available because they were made redundant, or they were available because they were relocating to different states. So, it really cut down again. It made it harder to find talent because the pool was shrinking. Unbeknownst to everybody else, they're going, there's so many people available in COVID. No. So, a lot of people that we've placed, we've only had a handful that have had to resign from companies to move to someone else. But making sure as a brand that you are projecting certainty, that you're robust financially, you're going to, as people go, yeah, sure, you've been going because you've been getting job seeker. Hey, you need to be able to know that you're going to exist when all the stimulus packages stop, that you are still flourishing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I've had a few of my clients have said, I want to keep looking for a job, but I don't want to risk what I've got right now. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Nash, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, and I agree. I think I think that was the ABC report also a couple of days back, the Four Corners one. With that also said that, I don't remember the exact facts, but they were. I think the job keeper is now cut to around $1,200 a fortnight, and I think next year they're going to cut by $1,000 a fortnight, and I think it's going to wind up in March 21. So it will be one of the concern for those people who are on JobKeeper, and we don't know how the labor market will really react to that once these measures start to wind up, and those would be probably be playing on job seekers mind right 100%. Now. Tell us, Sharon, about the hiring practices, because a lot of people ask me that they should. I'm in Melbourne. If I see a job in Sydney, should I apply, or will I be considered? Have you seen people? Obviously not right now, because nobody would want to come to Victoria,
exactly.
For a while. But do you see that as a kind of a challenge? Because when you're looking at a job in, for example, in Darwin or Queensland, you would see even interstate applicants also applying for roles. How are you seeing that? Because because I have a view that because of the COVID, there are many people have been laid off. So there'll be existing talent available. So recruitment agency or the employer is not going to ask someone from another state or even another city to come back and work in that city, unless you've got a very compelling proposition, or unless somebody internally who can put some weight behind the application. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Look, I think COVID has made us all reconsider a workforce. What does it look like now? For a lot of people, it's a virtual workforce. So I think what we're going to see is an opening up where companies are going to be on the ground, maybe in Sydney, but they may have people working remotely anywhere in the state of Australia. So that opens up a whole pool of, wonderful opportunities for talent as well as for companies. I've had my first 2 clients ever that are just totally virtual clients wanting virtual candidates. They can come from abroad or they can come from Australia. Now, before COVID, we would never have had that. Never. So COVID has brought about a different way that people are now going, well, we can actually work from anywhere. Like, I'm remote now, people weren't using Teams, Zoom is my next best friend, we can work from anywhere. So why wouldn't companies now go, let's look at our strategies? Because that was old. We want to break the rules. We're all going to be rule breakers now. We don't want to just be in this mold where we're just going to look in Sydney, and if we can't find anyone, we're going to labour in that market until we get someone. No, we can look outside of that. So then you're going to see a lot of that, a lot of movement in that space. And I think that's going to creep in as we see, I think, the country will be on a bit of a watching process as we segue out of all the stimulus to see what companies are going to be soaring and what companies are going to be, diving. So candidates will still be very sheepish around that time, but it'll open up so many more opportunities for talent, which will be so exciting. Like for me, I find that really exciting.
So in terms of the recruitment practice, I know you've mentioned about where you go looking for people, and obviously Zoom is, you're using Zoom more, but what else has changed from the recruitment practice in terms of, the whole hiring? What, are you doing things differently?
Look, I think you look at it in stages. So, whilst we're all in lockdown, we're a little bit more, I think, flexible, as in, if somebody walks in the door while you're in an interview, it's a little more acceptable. But as we move out of being in lockdown and out of COVID, I think some of those parameters are going to really tighten up. People are going to be watching to see, is she wearing a suit to the interview, or how was the presentation? I've literally let a few of those guards down because people are all working from home. We have children there. We've got, we're cramped into spaces we wouldn't ordinarily be working. We're made to. So everyone's been a bit more relaxed about that. So I think from that perspective, we're going to see a tightening of that as we move out of lockdown. And if you're not in your office, it doesn't matter. If you're at home, you'll be expected to, really be good on that Zoom interview. Look, I think our process is still the same. I'm just really astute into people's follow-up, follow-through, and follow back. I think I've really watched that a lot more. It's one thing to say you want a job, but if you're not coming to the table with your references already ready to go, have done the research, about the client. If you're not coming to the table like that, then you're not going to find a role. Like I think we've been ticking every box, going, well, okay, we'll be flexible here, but if you haven't done the research, then you're interested. You're just dipping your toe in the water. You're not a committed candidate. I still love a covering letter. I still want to know, why people think that they're good for that job. I've had some incredible covering letters, and I've had some really poor covering letters. The one thing I have found a lot lately is people are leaving off their phone numbers off their resumes or their email addresses. Yeah, so I'm not sure. Yeah, we've definitely had a few candidates where, they'll leave one or the other off. So if I'm going to, shoot back an email, I'm like, I have to go trawling back to their original application to find their email address. And another thing I found really interesting is that we are Zooming with plumbers and tradies, and I've had a great interview with a master plumber whom we placed, and he was a gem. Now, this is a man who's never had to go on Zoom. And when I said to him, look, this is going to be a Zoom interview, how do you feel about that? He's like, she'll be right. I'll get my daughter to help sort it out. I'm you already. And he was on, and he was fantastic. And he's gone off to join a company and just be a really valuable member of the team. So, but he was great. So I think a lot of people are getting savvy now, going, well, it's the way I have to go. I need to get more comfortable with it. And that's going to be application and Zoom interview, 100%.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hello to Amit, Balin, and Amit said due to COVID, we can be truly global. Absolutely, Amit. And, Rupal says probably onto your resume bit that we spoke about, she says, true that, because I think before we came on the show, you spoke about an application, a job that received 400 applications.
Mm.
And we have also spoken to another IT recruiter. She also said she received 360 applications
Yeah,
from that.
yeah,
Can you tell us, what do you do in that case? Like what are your,
yeah,
I'm assuming that you might use an applicant tracking system, or somebody looking at that, but that's just a mountain of things to go through. I had to,
yeah.
recently was involved in a hiring, for my team, and I had to look at 25 selection criteria. I was absolutely exhausted by looking at that, right? It
Yeah,
was way too difficult. So how do you do that? What are your thoughts on what people can do now
yeah.
that now we are kind of, we have, kind of seen that what COVID resume should look like, or what employers are expecting and everything. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So look, I think for people, they have to apply instantaneously. We do go from first in, best dressed. You have to. It's the fairest way possible, and we simply wade through it. But, I do look at a lot of criteria, and, I can go through 25, in probably 20 minutes. Like, it just takes me, because I know exactly what I'm looking for, because I'm familiar with the job brief, but I'm looking at, I can see a spelling error very quickly. I can see, if someone's addressed it to somebody else in another organisation. For me, it's if I've got attention to detail in my ad, they've already not got that, so we're done. And I hate to be so black and white with that, but when you've got 400 applications, you do. You have to have a culling system like that, and making sure that the resume has a good structure to it. If someone hasn't worked since 2017 and they've got no explanation in a covering letter, again, they will be bypassed to somebody who's got a current, job or something written in a covering letter as to why they're free. So we look at a lot of different things, but when you know the job so well, but what we've also done is we took a lot of those applicants because they're gold. So anybody that didn't fit the criteria but still was fantastic, we created a sub-folder, so to speak, where we go back to those candidates and we talk to them. What are you looking for? And we get an idea. And then we go back to any clients that we're working, saying, look, I'm not sure if you've got anything coming up, but this person has arrow flow experience, and I know that you look for that. Just want to let you know that we've got a gun at the moment. So we don't just drop a resume to a client. It's not like that. These are people that we've worked with over a long period of time. We get what they're looking for. But if I've got some talent there, I feel like it is my responsibility to promote them as much as I can, to try and get that job for them. Absolutely. So we have conversations, and what we would be developing is like our own community, so that if we have jobs, so I've got a Northern Territory community, I go straight in there and say, look, there's this job, you're creating all these little kind of hubs, and they then go, look, I don't know anyone, or I've now got a job, but hey, here's my friend, they're looking. So it's another way of getting your job out there without using a job board or anything like that. So you start dipping into your own community. So I always looked at there's gold, always.
Sharon, got a question. Got a couple of questions, I think, about CVs. Sugrat has said, what's the recommended length of a CV for someone with more than a decade of experience? And I'm going to throw in a question as well, is what's the first part of the CV that you go and look at?
That's a good question, Carolyn.
I like questions.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look, I go to the most current. I look at their covering letter. I'm a covering letter girl, so I want to see what's in the covering letter, why they applied for the role, and then I will look at the last role that they've had to see if they're still working or how long it's been since they've worked. So that would be my very first, place to go. How long should a CV be? So if you've worked for 10 years, you've got to think to yourself, most companies will only look at the last 5 to 8 years. That's it. Because anything prior to that, as far as systems, technology, it's gone. We're so innovative, like we've moved forward. The only time I would ever say to keep that on their resume is if that experience in that industry directly correlates to the industry they're trying to get back into, perhaps if they've had that experience. But for me, it's about the simplicity. It is not the quantity of resume. I've had people send through things like, they are like, it's literally like the Bible coming through. It's like, no, a client will sit there if you think, and this is where job seekers have got to be really savvy and go, look, if I had 400 applications or 50 applications, what would I hate? Well, I would hate something that was that thick. I only want something that is direct, to the point, simple but effective, and that would take somebody who hasn't got great recruitment experience, could still connect the dots in that resume to the job that they've actually got.
So it sounds like making it really obvious why
Yeah.
you're a good candidate for the role. Just on your note about cover letters, we have a video about it's called No More Crappy Cover Letters, because we've seen some really bad ones. So if you haven't watched it, you're watching this, go and check it out on YouTube. So we've got Charles, who said he's got roles and opportunities everywhere, and I think I saw that they were actually in IT. So if you're watching this, go and check out Charles's profile.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Look, covering letters has always been, it's really, subjective in a sense. Some people love them, some people hate them. It's just, that's something I like. I think it gives me a bit of an idea as to the applicant, if it's a good covering letter. Now, if it's pretty poor, I still look at the resume. I don't discount anybody for that. The only time I would discount it, if it's to, Dear John, from company XYZ and no correlation to my job, I'd be like, they just don't have the eye for detail that I'm looking for. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, we got a question from Dipesh that is changing career advisable in the current situation, given more jobs would be construction and IT. I'm not sure that that idea of that only construction and IT jobs will be in demand in future or in foreseeable future. But what are your observations? Because I'm pretty sure that you would receive resumes from people who are wanting to change careers as well.
Yeah.
And can you cite, if you have come across somebody who successfully made that change in this time? Obviously we have seen pilots making change, we have seen cabin crew making those changes, but we also want to see if you come across with anyone else who's made that interesting career change in these times.
Yeah. Look, I think it's twofold. Employers are sometimes they're very cautious when it comes to somebody who's doing a career change, because for them, there's a lot of time, effort, training, which equates into dollars to take on somebody as a risk that's going from, XYZ industry into this industry. So you do have a high degree of caution from employers. I think with employees, the magic is, why do they want to go into that new career? What is the motivating factor? And that has to be plausible. If it's not plausible, if I'm not convinced, I know my client's never going to be convinced. And I think that's really important. And the fact that it's quite authentic. What we're looking for is the unsaid, not the said. So, I don't want anyone to jump into a job. So we did have a classic example, and we had a position in New Zealand, and we had somebody who was too qualified for the role. So it's a little bit of a slant on what you've asked me, 𝗪𝗫, but really too qualified. So the client thought, well, look, this person has worked at a really high level. How about if we only had him for 6 months? We could really reap the benefits of that. And he came in and he absolutely crushed the role. Like, he was amazing. But he only stayed 2 months, not 6 months, because he got an offer. Now, they all left on good terms, but, it was one of those things that even though someone says, oh, I won't, I'm going to stick at the 6 months, or I do want to move into a different industry, unless it's absolutely plausible, I think you're going to get a really cautious response from employers. You might get some really innovative employers who are happy to take the risk, but I think a lot of companies at the moment will be looking at their purse strings. They'll be looking at the dollars, especially after all the stimulus is finished. And if that's going into training and the retention is not there, then they're gonna really slam it. They're going to be very cautious about that, because I think retention is going to be a huge thing coming up in the next sort of 6 months or so.
And why do you say that, Sharon? Is that because people will start to move again from roles, or just in why you say that?
Yeah, look, I think all of us have been under the radar during COVID. So all of us, companies have been under the radar by their employees, job seekers, and job seekers have been under the radar of employers as well. So what you're going to see about retention, so if employers have not looked after their current teams remotely and, you know, touching base and making sure that they're okay, looking after their mental well-being, you're going to see them as soon as the, you know, jobs start to come in, there'll be an abdication. So this was a really good opportunity for employers to go, what is our employee nurture program like, and are we really on point? We're gonna see a lot of that. That's going to be really important. And also too, job seekers, who got back to them, who gave them feedback, what companies were really diligent and said, hey Nyshard, really appreciate you sending your application because, you know, we're all in a really tricky spot, but you weren't successful, we just wanted to let you know. They're going to be top of mind. There'll be a lot of brands that will have burnt themselves because they didn't bother to get back. That's probably my biggest space that, you know, I talk to candidates who were actually quite distraught going, I never heard back. Like, did they even get my application? Like, it's lost in cyberspace. I don't know. Or I had a call and they never rang me back. Now, there'll always be one or two. There'll always be an exception. We can't strive for perfection, but we can almost get pretty close. So I think, you know, the retention side of things is going to be really under the spotlight from that perspective.
And it's interesting sometimes, you know, I always find it ironic because, you know, people get ghosted, but then the same recruiters are talking about best practice of people to apply for jobs. And, you know, because people, I know a lot of people do just do the spray and pray, but, you know, everybody's emotionally invested in getting a job and doing their best and very vulnerable at this time. So
vulnerable.
Yeah, I remember one incident where I applied for a role as a career development manager or something, you know, with a big industry body, and I didn't get a response. So that was first instance. The next time it was advertised again. The job was advertised in a couple of months, right? So I said, okay, all right, so I might apply again. I didn't get a response. So what I did was I actually wrote a letter to the manager. I physically went and posted. I really drafted a nice letter and said, what kind of practice is this that I've been chasing everyone in HR? I've left messages, I've sent an email, but it has gone through a black hole. I need to know whether are you considering my application or not. And this is my LinkedIn profile and blah, blah, blah. And I got an email back in 2 days time that, oh, you know, we apologize, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no, we found someone. And you know what, surprisingly, 6 months later, they were still looking. Somebody started left, right? So, and that's what it goes to really show that, you know, that how poor. I can cite an example in the current recruitment that we did. We found a great candidate, and there were a couple of candidates did not make it. And, you know, I called them, you know, after a fortnight and explained that to them. And I think that itself left me, you know, happy that, you know, maybe I you know, help them to change their perception that, you know, there is, you know, that I know that it's an emotional investment that you put in, and you are kind of on a teething age, right? Whether she will say yes or no, you know, like, you know, yes and no, right? So, you know, you're on a teething age, so we don't want to literally do that. So I fully agree with you, Sharon.
Yeah, and I think, you know, look, what companies have got to understand is that it's a vulnerable time for everybody. You know, it's vulnerable for them. Will they survive? The company survive? But it's also so vulnerable for the job seeker on the ground, you know. And it's just that feedback, you know, it's a difference, giving somebody feedback. And somebody, and look, I've had to let people know they didn't get the job, and that's been harder during COVID because I know how much they've wanted the job. So I found that quite challenging myself because, you know, being a bit of an empath, you're always going to feel that. But at the same time, I've been able to give them some constructive advice so they can go off and tweak that and then get the next job that they apply for. And many of the ones, like I've got a lovely candidate at the moment, and, you know, she didn't get the job. But the client has said, look, maybe in a couple of months, she was great, but there was just one more candidate just had that little bit more experience and kept her at the post. But in a couple of months, they'll be in a position to hire again, and they would look at her. So we will keep in touch with her. So that was really good to give her that feedback. So she felt like there's nothing more I could have done. It literally came down to my experience, and there still might be an opportunity there. So all about how she accepts that, how she behaves as a candidate will be very important in whether she gets that or not.
Absolutely. We've got a question. Oh, you go, Nash.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I think I was to mention about so Soga, there's a question about, can you please cite an example of how to mention correlate transferable skill set in an unrelated profession? If I can just do a plug for tomorrow's session, that's what we are talking about tomorrow, Soga. So if you want to come tomorrow 3 p.m., career change resumes is what we are talking tomorrow, and we are actually going to show you examples of how people have successfully done that on a resume. But we would love to hear your perspective on that, Sharon, about the mentioning the transferable skills on the resume, and how do you see that?
And look, absolutely, I'm all for transferable skills, because there's always going to be a time where talent in a particular space runs out. So you need to look outside that space. You need to say, okay, well, what would be similar type of candidates we would look at, and we'll go for the let's say call center. You would always look at people who'd worked as receptionists, still answering a call. It is still doing high levels of customer service. They're very customer facing, but also they're documenting information. So they would segue into a call center role, no problem. And I think that is a classic case of how you go from one industry, like one role, into another role. And I think, how do you look at that is by looking at the job description and going, okay, well, what have I done in this job that correlates with that job? And picking those out and making them very clear in a covering letter to the employer. But again, it comes down to the recruiter. They've got to be the ones that've got the open mind, take off the blinkers and go, I'm not just looking for this. If you don't have call center, I'm not looking at anyone else. They need to make sure that they've taken off their blinkers and look outside that zone. Because even when you have people that come in that have that experience, they may not fit the culture for whatever reason. They may not just be the right fit for that company. Whereas a receptionist who's had 6 months experience and is ready to move into something like that, has incredible transferable skills, will be the rock star, talent that goes in there and gets the job.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to that as well, and just sort of picking up on what you said. People get confused about transferable and make it sound much more complicated, I think, than it actually is. And it really is, look at the job description and look at what they're asking, and then go back into your experience and go, where have I done something similar? But it really does come from actually understanding the job. I had one client who was in marketing and event management who had done, I think, a project management and a change management qualification, and she wanted to move from that. So we looked at what was involved in a project management role, and then realised that the events that she'd managed my projects. So we recast that experience as in, what tools did she use to manage the event? How did she manage the budget? How did she communicate? And spoke about those under project. We put the marketing projects and event projects, and she was able to transfer across. But it really does come from look at what they're asking. Look at what you're actually supposed to do, and you will find examples in your background to demonstrate that. So, yeah.
And the fact that you're able to articulate what those skills are will set you in good stead. If you just say to someone, but I've got transferable skills, don't say the transferable skills I have are X, Y, Z. So that's a great example, Carolyn, because somebody who's got that advanced experience has to pivot, has to deal with the majority of people, has to re-educate people in the event space if there's a change. So they've got to, if there's a change in a schedule, they have to be able to implement that change swiftly, make sure that's articulated and communicated to a lot of the people across the board. So basically, that's a classic case. That is a transferable skill that you could certainly have molded and did effectively into that job by understanding that job description. And it is. The only pushback I ever get is not usually from the candidate, because we can draw that out of the candidate or the applicant. It is really sometimes from the recruiter, the hiring manager, who may not understand what transferable skills are. And I think that's really important, is understanding what are transferable skills.
Yep.
Absolutely. I've just recently seen, a job, not a job ad, but an interview where one of my clients was asked to do a game. So it was a virtual game, and it is set up as a game. And behind the game, they observe how you play the game. So there are rules, and you play the game. And behind this scene, they observe the behaviors of taking this turn to taking the other turn. And based on that, they determine whether you are really a great fit or not. And I think this is particularly very much happening in US, that I know a couple of startups are focusing on, gamifying this, because they can kind of shortlist from, for example, in a graduate roles, they get 500 jobs and they can shortlist them, based on that, rather than going through each of those resumes and everything else. And they can probably go to a larger pool of candidates, as well, which is really fantastic that I saw that. So tell us about the dreaded Zoom, interviews. So tell us how, what are what are some of the bloopers that you've seen, in last 6 months. People's kids coming along, cat coming on the computer. I don't know.
Looking at
and what do you?
because they're too close to the camera.
Sorry, I'm doing that now.
I always have to do a Zoom check going, how close am I? Or somebody leaves their camera on and, they're doing stuff in the background before they get onto the Zoom call. Like, it's like, this is blooper number 101, getting their clothes ready. Look, I think what people, from my, I think sometimes they've gone into it saying, it's COVID. It's all right for me to wear the active wear and the puffer vest, and, it doesn't matter if my hair's not done. And look, I'll check my phone, and I've seen a little bit of that actually. And to an extent where I probably will do some sort of, video to say, you need to not do that now. You need to stop doing that, because it's just setting you up for bad habits. And people coming to, like, I know that we've all got, we're all working in different circumstances, and you can't avoid a child coming in and things like that. I think there's a lot of leeway that is offered for that, and if anybody continues down that road, the leeway will be less and less because everyone's back at school, et cetera, et cetera. But I definitely think that people need to make sure, the one thing I've had a lot is that their Wi-Fi or their broadband is not strong enough, so they're cutting in and out. I've had a couple of very frustrating interviews like that. And at the end of the interview, I actually can't tell if the candidate is actually good for my role or not, because it's cut out. And, and halfway, like, I'm trying to talk to them and they're carrying their laptop around going, I'm just going to go to this corner. Just stop, just sit down, just hold it,
And the hand comes through. It's like...
And a couple of times I've had to, like, almost yell going, can you just stop, Or, so there's that. And just people, like, the whole time you can tell they're very conscious of being on Zoom. So it's almost like they come on and they're like a statue and they're like, am I doing okay? Like, this is my best side. And they're too conscious of how they're looking as opposed to, the information that we're having. And the best Zoom interviews I've had where people are well presented, it's a conversation, and that's how I run my Zooms. It's not look, these are my list of questions that we're going to go through. It's very conversational. That is done strategically because I want to know what is the unsaid, because that's what's going to happen in my clients, not the said. We've all done, people, can do the Google questions or the Google answers. I want the unsaid. I want to peel the onion and know what's in the center, because that's who comes out at my clients after, the induction onboarding is all done. Then the center of the onion appears, and I want to make sure it's great.
I think it's a really interesting thing over Zoom, because and video in general, is that you don't get there's that layer of energy about people that you don't actually pick up. So you need to be a bit slightly more louder, I think, than you would normally, because the video cuts out that. But I used to find years ago when I was recruiting, you get a sense of people, whatever it was. So some people you felt comfortable in their presence and it was a comfortable energy, and there are occasionally a person that I thought, oh my God, get me out of this room, open the door type thing. And that's harder to pick up over Zoom. I think that kind of level of comfort that you have just as another human being in the same presence as someone else. So, but you mentioned that you're doing more reference checking as well with your processes. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Because, obviously there's a lot of people that have been made redundant through COVID. So, with that, there's definitely a portion of those that have been let go for good reasons, poor performance, and other, more deeper, sinister reasons. So our job is to make sure that, we're doing the reference checking, and it's really important. I think what I've seen is a bit of a trend of companies where, let's just say John was an okay performer, but I'm feeling very guilty because I don't want to feel responsible that he can't pay his bills and things like that. So I'm going to give him a good reference just so he gets another job, but he didn't perform well here. So you need to do the next 2 layers of references to make sure that there are no behaviours that are sort of like historically flowing into each role, and once people start having behaviours, that usually will show up in previous roles as well. So we've had to be really careful with that, and we've done one reference and it's been extraordinary, and I've had to say to my team, whoa, let's not go for whoa. Let's do another reference. And they're like, but no, Sharon, they're fantastic. I'm like, no, step back from the ledge. Let's make sure, And the second one will not be a good reference. And we're like, okay, we need to go to a third, or we need to do another secondary Zoom interview. And, just going back to that Zoom interview, I think, that was a great observation, Carolyn. It's hard. It's really hard to get their energy check on that. So I always address the elephant in the room to say, look, this is a new way of doing it. How comfortable are you with Zoom? I'm just going to have a conversation. Let's just have a conversation about the role. I want to know a little bit about you. And I really bring that elephant out. And if they still don't have the energy, I honestly think that would happen in an interview, one-on-one situation as well. So really make sure I frame it up well, because, my objective is for people to win, not to lose. So I want to give them all the tools and resources to set themselves up to do a sensational Zoom interview. And then it's up to them. Otherwise, the lines of, enabling and empowering getting very blurred.
Charles says it's a conversation, exactly. So, yeah, I think that's right. So once people, once you screen off a resume, is it back to a level playing field then in terms of people's chance from an interview? So, because people think you've got to have everything on your resume, but the resume is to get you an interview. So if you've got a fantastic resume, does that put you ahead in terms of, the interview as well?
Look, I definitely think it puts you in a hot seat if you've ticked every box, absolutely. But, the whole thing is to battle test that. You've got to test and measure that. Just because somebody on paper looks really good, and it's happened to me a zillion times, I'll jump on Zoom and straight away it will not be the right fit. And I had a situation just recently where I was looking for somebody with a particular financial background, and this resume came in, and I thought, oh my God, this is the holy grail. This is a slam dunk. And I've gone to the Zoom, and let me tell you, it was a slam dunk, but not in the right direction. Because a resume doesn't talk literally. And, unfortunately, this was a client-facing position. And when I was doing the Zoom interview, it was very clear that, the slant on the client-facing was embellished, that there was probably out of 100% of your day, what portion is client-facing? And they said 10%. It was very evident. Great as a back-of-office person, compliance with a capital C. But the client facing had been embellished. So you always have to have that conversation. I've had other people where their resumes are really light on, and I'm like, look, I'm just going to give them a call, and they are a rock star. They are an absolute rock star. They just haven't put a lot in there. But the more I have the conversation, I'm like, yeah, I did that. Okay, well, what portion of your day was dedicated to that? And just, walk me through the process that you took to do that. And then you go, then you're getting excited, because in your mind you're going, this is such a slam dunk. What if I didn't look at that resume? I always think like that, always. So I always think it's just a phone call, and that will be the deciding factor for me whether to move to a Zoom interview or not. But I always like to give people that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So I think that's pretty much it. We don't have any more questions. Thank you again, Sharon, for joining us, and we also want to thank Charles for his lovely comments. Saugat, Dipesh, and also Amit and Balin as well. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. And if you want to find out more about what Sharon Vandermeer does, Google or just go to LinkedIn. Her company's name is On Ball Personnel. It's difficult to miss. So reach out to Sharon if there is a job available that Sharon is posting. She would be absolutely phenomenal to have a chat with her as well. And you currently recruit all across Australia, right, Sharon?
Yep, all across Australia, absolutely. So, which has been exciting. It's been quite different. We've never had that many roles, in all the states. So COVID has been great as far as giving us that experience. It's been, I've loved that, and we've now got some incredible talent that have relocated from different states. So it's been really good. It's been a great experience. And thank you for having
I hope
me
it
today.
continues to be very good and productive for you. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to have you on.
Yep, thank you. It's always a hoot with you guys, and I love that you've got so much, cutting edge information for all the people out there. Job seeking is really important. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tomorrow we're doing. I thought I'd just jump in, Naish. Tomorrow we're doing the career change CV, because I just think people struggle to write a CV in the first place, but the point about transferable skills. So we're going to unpack different ways that you can actually do that to help you get across the line. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're watching on LinkedIn, please follow the hashtag Career Care Package. We'll leave the rest to you, Naish.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening or watching on YouTube as well. And we will do this again 3 p.m. Tomorrow, where we are going to talk about career change resume. And we are also going to do it with examples, so that I know everybody loves examples, right? So that's what we are going to do. And then, and we'll be absolutely happy to provide you those samples as well for you to go ahead and get inspired or copy that as well. We won't charge you any fees, except that we charge 10% of your salary for the first year. But regardless, thank you very much, everyone, for coming along, and we will see you tomorrow. Until we see you, please look after yourself and your family and stay safe, everyone. Bye for now.